Hi everyone, welcome to my kitchen. Sorry for the intro, I've had too much coffee. My name's Alice, I'm the chef at the Greenhouse Cafe, and if you're new here, I was sharing some of my favourite lockdown recipes over summer, so if you missed any of those, go and check them out. They're in our Instagram highlights reel to have a look. But now we're in November, loads of you asked for some autumnal recipes, and I noticed that the predicted trend of lockdown 2 was going to be cinnamon rolls, so I thought I would get in there first, show you guys some delicious vegan ones. It is a yeasted recipe, so it will be taking about 3 hours or so, but we've all got plenty of time on our hands. And I just need to say that this is very closely based on a recipe I learned back in February when I did to do a vegan cookery diploma back in February, so thank God I did that. At least I've done something with my year. But yeah, shout out to any Demousse girls that are watching, miss you, and let's get going. Okie dokie, so as before I'm going to run through the method first, and then right at the end I'll post the written recipe and method so you can follow along and then go to that. So we'll start with our wet ingredients. So in this jug I've got 150 ml of milk and 50 ml of water, which I've just popped in the microwave for 30 seconds. And to that I'm going to add 100 grams of caster sugar, and I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of yeast. Doesn't matter if it's dried or instant, either way we need to reactivate it, so that's why we add it with the sugar to make sure he's alive. And we'll just give that a stir and leave him for about 5 minutes. Okay, so onto our flour. So we're going to use half bread flour and half spelt flour. I've got this nice ship to mill one. The reason we're using spelt flour because it's got much lower gluten content, which means the bun will be really nice and spongy. But if you can't get hold of spelt flour, just use plain flour, or you can also use 600 grams of plain flour. So mix and match. Luckily there's not been a flour shortage yet, so if you can get hold of spelt, ideal. If not, mix and match between your flours, but we're going to go for 300 grams of spelt flour and 300 grams of bread flour today, so I'm just going to combine those and then we will add the rest. Also just going to add about half a teaspoon of salt for good luck, and then we're going to combine and then make a bit of a well in the middle to pour our liquid into. So the secret ingredient of these cinnamon rolls is we're going to add applesauce. And here are some I prepared earlier. This is going to help it stay really nice and moist and light. In non-vegan cinnamon rolls you'd use eggs and butter and all that rubbish. But here we're just going to use lovely applesauce. You can just use the tinned stuff that you'd serve with roast dinner, but either way, make sure you just pass it through a sieve to make sure it's got rid of all the lumps, because we're going to be working it into the dough. To make my applesauce, I just cut up 1 Bramley apple and added around 50 ml of water, and then brought it to the boil and let it simmer for like 5 minutes. And that should be plenty. So I'm just going to pass this through the sieve, make it nice and smooth, and then we're ready to make our dough. So that apple made exactly 120 ml, which is exactly the amount we need. The last bit I'm just going to do is measure out the vegetable oil, which we're going to add 60 ml of vegetable oil into here. You can use any veg oil. I'm just using olive oil because it's all I've got, but any neutral veg oil is absolutely fine. Right, so now we're on to the fun and messy bit. So I've got all of my ingredients. I'm going to first add the apple and oil mixture into the middle of our wet ingredients. Sorry, dry ingredients. And our yeast has been sitting for about 5 minutes. Don't know if you can see, but it's really nice and frothy, so that's good to go as well. So we'll add all of that into the flour, and then we're going to get going on making this into a dough. If you're a really dirt phobe, you can use a spoon or a knife at this point, but I'm just going to literally get stuck in and mix it all together with my hands and my fingers until all of the wet and the dry is absorbed and one nice big unit. So as you can see, we've got rid of all of the offcuts and we've got one nice big ball. It is fairly sticky, but it's not too bad. It should be combined. Don't be tempted to add any more flour at this point, because the longer we knead and leave it, the more the flour will hydrate and it will come less and less sticky. So I'm going to give it a good kneading now, and hopefully it will form a beautiful springy ball. I'm going to knead it for about 5 minutes and see how we're looking after that. The texture has completely changed. It is beautiful and smooth, not sticky at all. If you've watched Bake Off, I'm sure you have, they do the old window pane test, don't they? So if you just get it really thin, you can just about see through that without it tearing. So that means the gluten is nice and developed and ready to go. So I'm just going to create some surface tension by like rolling it around. I don't know, I'm a novice really. And I'm going to get this into a lightly oiled bowl and leave it to proof for about an hour and a half. So I'm just going to add a very small glug of oil in the bowl and move that all around. And then we're going to plop our little lovey right in the middle. Shake it up so it's already covered in some oil. And then I'm going to cling film that and leave it on the side. So the last thing I'm going to do before I sit down for a cup of tea is make the filling for the cinnamon rolls. So in here I've got 150 grams of vegan spread. Side note, if you haven't found this yet, I would highly recommend you look into that because it is just like butter and vegan. And I'm going to add 75 grams of soft brown sugar. And I'm going to add a tablespoon of cinnamon. I know not everyone is a fan of cinnamon, but autumn must just be the worst time of year because I drink this stuff. Also going to add a sprinkle of nutmeg just because I'm really obsessed with nutmeg at the moment. And then I've just creamed that all with the back of a spoon so it's nice and smooth and ready to smother over our dough in a little while. So I'll see you in a bit. Welcome back. It's been almost bang on an hour and a half. You can see our dough has doubled nicely. It is definitely ready, so we're going to go on to the shaping process. Before we do that, I'm just going to line this tray, which is where the cinnamon rolls are going to sit. Nice little trick for you. I can't remember if I've shown this before, but if you're lining a deep dish tray like this, if you go around all of the corners and slit in with some scissors, if you can see what I'm doing there, it should fall rather nicely into there with all the corners all folded and ready to go. So once we've shaped the rolls, they're going to sit in there and then do another little second proof. Right, so I've lightly floured the surface. I've got a rolling pin to hand as well and some extra flour. Just going to roll, oh, out we come. So you can see the beautiful amount of air that's in there. Sprinkle a bit more flour over the top. And we're going to roll. So it's natural for the air to come out at this point because we're just going to get some more in when we do the second proof. I'm going to try and make this a lovely long rectangle by just continuously rolling back and forth. And if you think it's going to stick at any point, just add a little bit more flour underneath because we don't want it sticking to the surface. Right, I've been rolling it for a little while, just trying to make sure it's as square as I can get it and that all of the dough is the same thickness. I would guess it's probably 1/2 centimetre in thickness at the moment. So I think that is plenty. I'm just going to again just check that none of it's sticking, and if it is I'll add a little more flour, but it seems to be moving around. So let's fill them up. Right, and now I'm going to load on the filling. So I've got a palette knife, but you can just use a knife or the back of a spoon. And we're going to smear this all over until we've got a nice even coat. And don't worry if the dough moves around too much because we can always pull it back just until it's covered Oh god, it smells amazing. So I've got a nice even coating. I've just sort of tugged at the edges just to make sure it's super squared off. And now we roll. So I'm just going to very gently tuck in all of the edge on the very bottom. So that's all tucked. And I'm just going to keep very lightly pushing it the whole way up. And this is where it's really important that it doesn't stick. If it does stick at all, just very gently sort of usher it upwards with a bit more flour underneath. You can see I've got a big lump of flour there, I'll just get rid of that. Until the whole thing is rolled, like so. So I'd like to make these around 1.5 inches in length. So with the sharpest knife you've got, I'm just going to cut off the very ends because often there's not quite enough dough and filling in to make it worthwhile. That's a really tiny one. I've got this measurer thing because I'm a chef and I'm annoying, but you can guesstimate, or if you've got a measuring tape or anything, I'm just going to score on the top around 1.5 inches. You can make them as big or as small as you like, within reason. Oh gosh, I've really messed this up. It's so hard to multitask. Let's just... Right, so they're all scored, and now I've got a really sharp knife, and I'm not going to push down because I'll get all of the cinnamon squeezing out. So I'm sort of going to slice it like I'm slicing a loaf of bread. And there we have the inside, and we're going to put that in our baking tray. So I'll just do another one very lightly, saw away. Lightly saw, wouldn't want to heavily saw. There we go. So this is my first tray. I've spaced it out a little bit. You don't want them too tightly packed, but it doesn't matter if they're touching. Obviously when they do their second proof, they are going to rise again, so they will end up touching, but that's sort of the point of a cinnamon roll. They are meant to tear away from each other. So I've got 3, 6, 9, 12. I've got 11 in here, and I'm just going to line another baking tray and get the other ones in there, and then we'll cling fill them and give them their second proof. I'll just keep showing in case you need another recap. Very lightly pushing through instead of pushing out to get the rolls. Right, so my second tray, I've got 5 more. I'm just going to plop the ends that we cut off in as well because we hate waste. So that's all of them, all lined up. And we're going to leave these for about half an hour with some cling film on top. They shouldn't need too long because they are already super puffy, but I'll check back in half an hour and get the oven preheating. So I just had a thought that 16 is actually quite a lot of cinnamon rolls. So you're very welcome to halve the recipe. However, I was just thinking that for recipes that do take like upwards of 3 hours, you might as well double it. Don't double it again because you'll just be drowning in cinnamon rolls. But you can really easily store them in the freezer and put them in the oven to reheat them once they're cooked. So just some food for thought, pardon the pun. I'm going to call it on these cinnamon rolls because I'm a bit nervous they're going to overproof because it's quite warm in my kitchen. So I'm going to get these in the oven at 200 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes, and then we'll turn the temperature down and give them another 15. So we have one more task to make these the most epic cinnamon rolls ever. You can top your cinnamon rolls with whatever you like, cinnamon sugar. You could just mix up a bit of icing sugar with some soy milk. I'm going to show you my cream cheese buttercream, and we'll lather that on once they're out the oven, and they're just going to be so delicious. I'm so excited, and I also haven't managed to cook dinner, so these are literally going to be my dinner. So for the buttercream, I've got about 150 grams of sifted icing sugar. Always sift your icing sugar. I'm going to add 50 grams of softened vegan butter. I'm going to add 2 rogue ingredients, but bear with me. I'm gonna add half a teaspoon of lemon juice to start. We can always add more. And half a teaspoon of white wine vinegar. Don't ask me why it's in a water bottle. I don't have a good answer. I'm just going to cream those together. So those two things combined are really going to cut through the sweetness of the sugar and literally just give it a cream cheese flavour. I know it sounds weird, but it really works. And I use it on all of my carrot cakes or lemon cakes. It just works. It's awesome. I'm so happy that I discovered it. So I've got that. I'm just going to add a little bit more liquid because it's quite stiff, but that's good to go. So I ended up adding about a teaspoon more of the vinegar and another half a teaspoon of lemon. That's the final texture. It's perfect for smearing over those buns in a minute. Perfect. So here we have it, the final product. I'm going to eat one. I think that cream cheese buttercream really makes a difference because it adds another level. It's so good. So I'm going to put the ones in the tray, pretty much leave them to cool and put them in the freezer so I can have them for breakfast for the rest of the month. And the buttercream will keep in the fridge for a couple of weeks, so you should be fine to do that. Thank you for joining me. It's been a hell of a marathon. I'm gonna go ahead and post the recipe and everything you need to know, so hopefully you can replicate it at home. Let me know if you do, and I wish you the best of luck. They are actually really simple. It's just a lot of waiting around, so you'll be fine. Good luck. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.